Nettie Calloway pressed her fingernail into the wooden post and dragged it down slow. 3 marks. Morning, midday, night. Her hands were shaking, but the count had to be right. If she lost count, she lost the only proof she had that the days were still passing. Somewhere outside the root cellar, her father's boots crunched across dry Kansas dirt, and a bottle clinked against stone. She closed her eyes. He was early today, and that meant it would be worse. Now, before this story rides any further into the dust, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Settle in with your coffee or tea and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story travels. Because what happens next didn't just shake one ranch, it shook the whole county. The padlock on the root cellar door had rusted over twice since Harlan Calloway first bolted it shut. Nettie knew because she'd felt it with her fingers through the gap, counting the rough patches the way other girls might count stitches on embroidery. She heard him coming before the latch moved. The drag of his left boot, the one he'd never fixed since Shiloh. The clink of glass. The pause where he gathered himself to sound like a father instead of what he'd become. The door opened. Light hit her face like a slap. "You eat?" Harlan asked. She didn't answer. "I asked you a question, Nettie." "You left hardtack and water," she said, voice flat. "I ate." Harlan stepped inside his bulk, blocking most of the light. He smelled like whiskey and unwashed cotton. He set a tin plate on the dirt floor. More hardtack. A strip of dried beef that looked older than the cellar. "Maeve Dunlap came by the house today," he said. Nettie's head came up fast. Too fast. She saw Harlan notice and cursed herself. "What did she want?" Nettie asked, keeping her voice even. "Same thing she always wants. Poking around, asking after you. Told her you were down with fever again." He crouched in front of her, and his knees cracked. She believed it. She always does. She won't believe it forever. Harlan's hand shot out and caught her chin. Not hard enough to bruise, just hard enough to remind her who held the key. "She'll believe it as long as I say it. You understand me?" Nettie held his gaze. She'd learned a long time ago that looking away made it worse. Looking away meant he'd squeeze tighter just to see her flinch. "I understand," she whispered. Harlan released her chin and stood up. "I need you to sign one more paper." "No." The word came out before she could stop it. Small, but solid. Harlan went still. "What did you say?" "I said no. I already signed the deed. You got Mama's land. That's what you wanted." Harlan's face changed. Not anger, not right away. Something colder. He pulled the cellar door shut behind him, closing them both inside. Nettie's heart hammered, but she didn't move. "That deed," Harlan said slowly, "covers the 40 acres south of the river. This paper covers water rights. The irrigation easement your mother filed with the county before she died. I know what it covers. Then you know it's worth more than the dirt itself. Without water rights, the land is dust. With them, it's the most valuable parcel between here and Junction City." Nettie pressed her back against the wall. "That's why I won't sign it." Harlan stared at her for a long time. Then he bent down, picked up the tin plate, and walked out. The padlock clicked shut. She heard his boots on the dirt getting farther away. Then nothing. Nettie waited until the silence was thick enough to trust. Then she pressed her fingernail into the post. One more mark. Midday. She had 47 marks now. 47 days since he'd moved her from the house to the cellar. 47 days since she'd seen anyone but him. And 47 days since she'd stopped believing anyone in Abilene would come looking. Josiah Crane had been up since before the sun. That was nothing new. Since Sarah passed, mornings had become the only honest part of the day. No one expected conversation from a man before coffee, and coffee was the only company that didn't ask how he was holding up. He saddled his horse, a gray gelding named Slate, and rode toward Abilene to pick up fencing wire from Dunlap's general store. The summer heat was already pushing 90 by mid-morning, and the road kicked up dust that stuck to sweat. He tied Slate outside the store and pushed through the door. Maeve Dunlap stood behind the counter sorting nails into tin cans with the efficiency of a woman who'd been running things alone for years. "Morning, Josiah?" "Maeve." "Fencing wire?" "Yes, ma'am. 60 feet if you've got it." Maeve nodded toward the back. "Levi's pulling it now." She paused, hands still on the nails. "You ride past the Calloway place on your way in." Josiah shook his head. "Came the North Road. Why?" Maeve set down a handful of nails and leaned on the counter. "Something's wrong out there, Josiah. I've been by 3 times this summer. Harlan answers the door every time, says Nettie's sick. Fever, he says. Melancholia. Changes the story each visit." Could be true. "For 7 weeks." Maeve's voice dropped. "I knew Ruth Calloway. I was with her the night Nettie was born. That girl doesn't have melancholia. She has a father who won't let her leave the house." Josiah took off his hat and ran a hand through his hair. He didn't want this. He'd come for fencing wire. "Maeve, I don't know the man well enough to—" "You knew Ruth." That stopped him. He had known Ruth Calloway. She'd brought soup to his ranch after Sarah's funeral, even though she was already sick herself. Quiet woman, strong hands. She'd sat on his porch and said nothing for an hour, and it was the most comforting hour of that whole terrible month. Ruth left that girl 40 acres and water rights along the Smoky Hill. Maeve continued. "Harlan's been drowning in gambling debt since she died. You do the arithmetic." Josiah looked at her. "What do you want me to do about it?" "You're riding back south anyway. The Calloway place is 2 miles off the main road. Just ride by. That's all I'm asking. And if everything's fine, then you've lost 20 minutes and I'll give you the fencing wire at cost." She held his gaze. "And if everything's not fine, you'll know. You're not the kind of man who can unsee a thing once he's seen it." Josiah put his hat back on. He wanted to say no. He wanted to say it was none of his business that a man's household was his own affair, that he had fences to mend and cattle to check and 100 reasons to ride the other way. Instead, he said, 2 miles off the main road. Take the fork past the creek. You'll see the house from the ridge." He didn't say another word. He loaded the wire, tipped his hat to Maeve, and rode south. Harlan Calloway's place looked the way a man's place looks when he's stopped caring what other people think. Fence posts leaned at bad angles. The chicken coop was empty, and the door hung off one hinge. Weeds had taken the garden Ruth used to keep. Josiah pulled Slate to a stop at the edge of the property. He sat there for a moment listening. Heat bugs. Wind through dry grass. Nothing else. No voices. No movement from inside the house. He was about to turn around when he heard it. A sound from the ground. Low, muffled. Coming from behind the house. He dismounted and walked slow, keeping his footsteps quiet out of instinct more than intent. He rounded the house and saw the root cellar. Stone walls sunk into the ground, a wooden door flat against the earth, and a padlock hanging from the latch. A padlock, on a root cellar, in summer. Josiah crouched next to the door. "Hello?" Silence. Then a shuffle. Then a voice so dry and cracked it barely carried through the wood. "Who's there?" "Name's Josiah Crane. I'm a rancher from south of here." Another pause. Longer. "Are you with my father?" "No, ma'am. I came on my own. Maeve Dunlap asked me to ride by and check on things." She made a sound that could have been a laugh or a sob, hard to tell through 2 inches of wood. "Maeve sent you." "She did." "My father's in town, at the card tables. He'll be back by sundown, maybe sooner if he loses early." Her voice steadied like she was forcing it to hold together through pure will. "There's a padlock on the door. I see it. The key's on a nail inside the kitchen, above the stove. He thinks I don't know where it is, but I watched him through the cracks." Josiah stood up. He looked at the house, then back at the cellar door. "How long have you been down here?" 47 days. The number hit him like a fist. Not because it was large, but because she'd counted every single one. Josiah walked to the kitchen door, found it unlocked, went straight to the nail above the stove, and took the key. His hand was steady. The rest of him was not. He came back to the cellar, fit the key into the padlock and turned it. The lock opened with a sound like a bone cracking. He lifted the door. She was sitting on the dirt floor with her knees drawn up, thin, pale for summer, wrists marked with rope burns that had scabbed and scarred and scabbed again. Her dress was the same one she'd probably been wearing when he put her down there, faded and torn at the hem. But her eyes were clear. That was the thing he'd remember later. Everything else about her looked broken, but her eyes were absolutely clear. "Can you stand?" he asked. "I've been standing every day, pacing, keeping my legs from going." She rose without help, though she swayed once and caught herself on the wall. "He wanted me weak. I wouldn't give him that." Josiah offered his hand. She looked at it for a long moment, then took it. Her grip was stronger than he expected. "I need to tell you something before we leave," Nettie said as she stepped into the sunlight. She squinted and turned away from the brightness. "My father has a signed deed transfer for my mother's land. I signed it under duress. He locked me in the cellar and told me I wouldn't see daylight until I put my name on it." "Did you sign?" "I signed the land. I didn't sign the water rights. That's why I'm still down there." She looked at him directly. "He'll tell you I'm sick in the head. He'll tell you I'm unstable. He'll tell the sheriff, the judge, and every man at the card table. And some of them will believe him, because it's easier to believe a father than a locked door." Josiah studied her face. She wasn't asking for pity. She was laying out the battlefield. "Can you ride?" he asked. "I can ride." "Then we're leaving." He helped her onto Slate and climbed up behind her. The horse shifted under the double weight, but settled. Josiah turned toward the main road. "He'll come after me," Nettie said. Her voice didn't shake, but he felt her back tense against his chest. "I expect he will. He has friends, men who owe him or men he owes. Either way, they'll back him. I expect that too. Why are you doing this?" Josiah was quiet for a while. Slate's hooves kept time on the hard-packed road. "Because I didn't do it once before, and the woman I didn't help ended up buried in a field outside of Wichita with no marker and no name." Nettie didn't say anything to that. She didn't need to. They rode for an hour before Josiah's ranch came into view. He had a proper fence, a well-kept barn, and a house that looked solid, even if it looked lonely. He helped Nettie down from the horse and handed her a cup of water from the well. "You'll stay in the house," he said. "I'll sleep in the barn." "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I'm telling you how it's going to be." He paused, then softened. "There's a lock on the bedroom door. It locks from the inside. The key is on the dresser. You keep it." Something shifted in her face. Not gratitude exactly. Recognition. The recognition that someone had thought about what she might need before she'd had to ask for it. "Thank you," she said. "Don't thank me yet. When your father finds out where you are, this gets harder before it gets easier." Nettie took the cup back to the well and set it on the stone edge. She stood there with her back to him, looking at the horizon. "There's something else you should know." "All right." "The water rights my mother filed. They're not just valuable. They control irrigation for 3 ranches downstream, including Judge Pruitt's property." She turned around. "My father didn't just want the rights to pay off gambling debts. He wanted leverage over the judge, over the men who could rule against him in court." Josiah let that sink in. "So if your father controls the water, he controls who gets to farm, who gets to ranch, and who gets to eat." Nettie's voice was steady as iron. "That's why he locked me in a cellar for 47 days. Because I'm the only thing standing between him and that kind of power." Josiah looked at her standing by his well in her torn dress with rope scars on her wrists, and he understood something he hadn't fully grasped until that moment. This wasn't a rescue. This was the start of a war. And the girl standing in front of him wasn't a victim. She was the only soldier on the right side. "We'll need Maeve," he said. "We'll need more than Maeve. We'll need the sheriff. And we'll need someone who can prove that deed was signed under duress. My mother kept a journal, every entry, every day, right up until she died. She wrote about my father, about the drinking, about what he did when he drank. Where's the journal? Hidden. Under the floorboards in my bedroom at the house. He doesn't know it exists. Your mother hid it. No, I did. 3 years ago when I realized what he was becoming. Josiah stared at her. 18 years old, no 22 now, he corrected himself. And she'd been planning for this, not escape, evidence. You knew this day would come, he said. I prayed it wouldn't. She sat down on the porch step, and for the first time her shoulders dropped. Not defeat, exhaustion. But my mother taught me to hope for the best and prepare for a man at his worst. The sun was getting low. Shadows stretched across the yard like fingers reaching for something they couldn't quite touch. Josiah sat on the step beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. First thing tomorrow, he said. I'll ride into Abilene and talk to Maeve. She'll know who in town might stand with us and who won't. Then we go to Sheriff Briggs. Briggs plays cards with my father. I know. So you know he won't be on our side. I know he'll have to pretend to be, at least in public. A locked cellar and rope marks don't look good no matter whose daughter you are. Nettie looked at her wrists. She'd been rubbing them without realizing it. He'll say I did this to myself. Part of the melancholia. Did you? Her eyes flashed. No. Then we'll let the marks speak for themselves. Somewhere beyond the ranch, a coyote called out, and another answered. Nettie stiffened at the sound just for a second, the way someone does when any unexpected noise might mean a door is about to open. Josiah noticed. He didn't mention it. You hungry? He asked instead. Starving. He stood and went inside. Came back with bread, salted pork, and a jar of preserves Sarah had put up the year before she died. He'd never been able to open them until now. Nettie ate slowly, deliberately, like someone teaching herself to trust food that didn't come with conditions attached. Between bites, she talked. Not about the cellar, about her mother. She was the strongest woman I ever knew, Nettie said. She married my father when he was still the man he was before the war. She watched him change, and she stayed because she believed people could change back. She was wrong about that, but she wasn't wrong about much else. What was she right about? That land is the only thing a woman can own that a man can't charm away from her. That's why she filed those water rights in her own name. She knew what he'd become. She just didn't know it would get this bad. Josiah poured her more water. Ruth was a good woman. You knew her. She brought soup to my ranch after my wife died. Sat on that very porch for an hour. Didn't say a word. It was the best conversation I had that whole year. Nettie smiled, then small and quick, like something she hadn't used in a while. That sounds like her. They sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence that doesn't need filling. Then Nettie spoke again, and her voice had changed, harder, flatter. My father will be home by now. He'll find the cellar open and the key gone. He won't come tonight. He'll drink first. He always drinks first. By morning he'll have a story ready, something that makes him the wronged father and me the ungrateful daughter. And by the time he rides into town, half of Abilene will be shaking their heads about poor Harlan Calloway and his troubled girl. You know him well. I've had 47 days to study him with nothing else to do. She set the bread down. He'll come here, probably not alone. And he'll bring paper, not fists. He learned a long time ago that paper hurts worse than knuckles and lasts longer. Josiah leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Then we'd better have our own paper ready. The journal, Nettie said. The journal. She looked at his ranch, at his barn, at the fence he'd built with his own hands. Why did Maeve send you, specifically you? I don't know. I think I do. Nettie met his eyes. She sent you because you're the one man in this county who already lost someone he couldn't save, and she knew you wouldn't be able to walk away from that a second time. Josiah felt something tighten in his chest. He didn't answer, because she was right, and saying so out loud would make it heavier than he could carry tonight. Get some rest, he said. Lock the door, I'll be in the barn. Nettie stood. She paused at the door, one hand on the frame. Josiah. Yeah. 47 days, I counted every mark. Every morning, I told myself someone would come. And every night I told myself I was a fool for hoping. She looked at him over her shoulder. I wasn't a fool. She went inside. He heard the lock turn from within. He stood on the porch for a long time, watching the road that led back to Abilene, knowing that somewhere along that road, Harlan Calloway was staring at an empty cellar and making plans. The summer air was thick and still, not a breath of wind. Even the coyotes had gone quiet. Josiah walked to the barn, lay down on the straw, and closed his eyes. Sleep wouldn't come easy tonight. But tomorrow, they'd ride into town. Tomorrow, they'd start the fight. And somewhere in Abilene, in a small house with an empty root cellar and a nail above the stove where a key used to hang, Harlan Calloway sat at his kitchen table, stone sober for the first time in months, reading the name on a property deed by candlelight and thinking very carefully about his next move. Josiah woke to the sound of footsteps on the porch. He grabbed the rifle beside his bedroll and was on his feet before his eyes fully opened. Dawn light cut through the barn slats. The footsteps stopped. "It's me," Nettie called from outside. "I made coffee." He lowered the rifle and let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. He stepped out of the barn and found her standing on the porch with 2 tin cups, her hair pulled back with a strip of cloth she must have found in the house. She looked different in morning light, still thin, still marked, but standing straighter like something inside her had remembered how. "You sleep?" he asked, taking the cup. "Some. More than I have in weeks. That lock on the door helped." Josiah sipped the coffee. It was strong enough to strip paint. He didn't mention it. "We need to ride into Abilene this morning. Talk to Maeve first, then the sheriff. Briggs won't help us." "Maybe not, but we need him on record knowing. If something happens and we never reported it, your father controls the story." Nettie wrapped both hands around her cup. "There's something I didn't tell you last night." Josiah waited. "My father doesn't just play cards with Sheriff Briggs. He holds Briggs's marker. $300 from a bad night at the Long Branch last winter. Briggs can't pay it back, and my father never asked him to. He just kept the paper." She looked at Josiah over the rim of her cup. "You understand what that means? It means the sheriff owes your father a favor he can't refuse. It means the sheriff owes my father whatever he asks for." Josiah set his cup down on the porch rail. The situation had just gotten heavier, and it was already heavy enough to crack a man's back. "All right, then we start with Maeve. She'll know who else we can talk to. There's Judge Pruitt. Your father controls his water." "Not yet. Not until he gets those water rights signed. Right now, the rights are still in my name. The judge doesn't know my father is trying to take them. If we tell him first, we give the judge a reason to side with us before your father gives him a reason to side against us." Nettie nodded. "My mother was smart, Josiah. She filed those water rights separately from the land deed on purpose. She knew. Maybe not the details, but she knew the kind of man my father was becoming, and she built a wall between him and the only thing that mattered. The water. The water." They finished their coffee in silence. Then Josiah saddled Slate and a second horse, a chestnut mare named Copper that Sarah had picked out years ago. He helped Nettie mount up, and they rode north toward Abilene. The ride took just over an hour. Neither of them said much. Nettie rode well better than Josiah expected for someone who'd spent 47 days underground. She kept her eyes on the road, scanning, watching for dust. Watching for her father. They reached Dunlap's general store just after the town woke up. Maeve was sweeping the front steps when she saw them coming. She set the broom against the wall, put both hands on her hips, and watched them dismount. "Well," Maeve said, "I see you found more than fencing wire." "Maeve?" Josiah started. But Maeve wasn't looking at him. She was looking at Nettie. Her eyes went to the girl's wrists, to the rope scars, to the way Nettie held herself like someone who expected to be grabbed at any moment. Maeve's face didn't crumble. It hardened. "Get inside," Maeve said. "Both of you. Now." She locked the store door behind them and flipped the sign to closed. Levi came down from the stockroom, a tall young man with his mother's sharp eyes and his father's broad shoulders. He stopped when he saw Nettie. "Levi, put water on to boil," Maeve ordered, "and bring the kit from under the counter." "I'm all right," Nettie said. "You're not all right. You're standing in my store looking like you crawled out of a grave, and I'm going to clean those wrists before we talk about anything else. Sit down." Nettie sat. Not because she was obedient, but because Maeve Dunlap was the kind of woman who didn't give you a choice and somehow made you grateful for it. Levi brought the water and a cloth kit. He glanced at Nettie's wrists and his jaw tightened, but he didn't say anything. He set the kit beside his mother and stepped back. Maeve worked in silence for a minute, cleaning the scabbed rope burns with warm water and a gentleness that didn't match the fury in her eyes. Then she spoke without looking up. "How long?" 47 days, Nettie said. "Root cellar?" "Yes." "Padlocked?" "Yes." Maeve's hands paused. She took a breath, finished wrapping Nettie's left wrist, and started on the right. "I went to that house 3 times. He stood in the doorway every time and fed me lies, and I—" Her voice caught. She pressed her lips together and kept rapping. "I should have pushed harder." "He's convincing," Nettie said. "He convinced the whole town." "He didn't convince me. I just didn't push hard enough. That's different, and it's worse." Levi spoke from where he stood by the counter. "What do you need?" He wasn't asking his mother. He was asking Nettie. She looked at him and something passed between them that Josiah noticed but didn't name. "I need the sheriff to know what happened," Nettie said. "I need the deed transfer reviewed, and I need my mother's journal from under the floorboards in my bedroom at the house." "Journal?" Maeve asked. "My mother kept a record. Every day from the time my father started drinking until the week she died. She wrote down what he did, what he said, what he threatened. I hid it 3 years ago, when I realized he'd burn it if he found it." Maeve tied off the bandage and sat back. Ruth kept a journal. She kept everything: dates, details, witnesses. She was building a case, even if she never got to use it. The room went quiet. Maeve looked at Josiah. Josiah looked at Nettie. Levi looked at all 3 of them. "Briggs won't help," Maeve said flatly. "Harlan's got him leashed, but Briggs isn't the only law in this county." "Judge Pruitt," Josiah said. "Pruitt is fair. Strict and old-fashioned, but fair. If we put this in front of him with evidence, he'll hear it. But we need that journal, and we need it before Harlan figures out it exists." "I'll go," Nettie said. "No," Josiah and Maeve said at the same time. "He'll expect me to come back for my things. He'll be watching the house." "Which is exactly why you're not going," Josiah said. "You don't know where the floorboard is. You don't know which room which board or how to pry it up without splitting it. I do. I've done it 100 times in the dark." "She's right," Levi said quietly. Everyone looked at him. "She's the only one who knows where it is. But she doesn't have to go alone." "I'll go with her," Josiah said. "No." Maeve held up her hand. "Josiah, if Harlan sees you near his property after taking Nettie, he'll use it. He'll say you're trespassing, say you're harassing him, and Briggs will back him up. You need to stay clean. Go to Judge Pruitt. Tell him what you found. Get it on record." "Then who goes with Nettie?" "I do," Levi said. Maeve looked at her son for a long moment. Whatever she saw in his face, she didn't argue. "Go the back way, through the creek bed. Harlan watches the road, not the water." Nettie stood. The bandages on her wrists were white and clean, and they made the rest of her look even more battered by contrast. She looked at Levi. "You sure about this?" "My mother spent 3 years feeling guilty for not pushing through your father's door. I'm not going to spend the next 3 feeling the same way." They left through the back of the store. Josiah watched them go, then turned to Maeve. "He's young. He's 25, old enough to know right from wrong and young enough to still do something about it." Maeve untied her apron and hung it on a hook. "Judge Pruitt takes his lunch at the hotel dining room at noon sharp. You'll catch him there. Bring the rope burns in his mind before Harlan brings the gambling debts." Maeve. "What? If this goes wrong?" "If this goes wrong, a girl who spent 47 days in a hole goes back to a man who put her there. That's not an option, Josiah. Not in my town." He tipped his hat and walked out. The ride to Judge Pruitt's hotel took 20 minutes. Josiah used every one of them to think about what he was going to say. Pruitt was known for precision. He didn't like emotion in his courtroom, didn't like pleas, didn't like tears. He liked facts, documents, and law. Josiah had nothing on paper. He had rope burns, a locked cellar, and the word of a 22-year-old girl against her father. He found Pruitt exactly where Maeve said he'd be, sitting at a corner table with a plate of roast beef and a copy of the Abilene Chronicle. Samuel Pruitt was 60 years old, with a white beard trimmed close and eyes that had seen every kind of lie a man could tell. "Judge Pruitt." Pruitt looked up. "Mr. Crane, I don't believe we have business." "We do now, sir." "Sit down then, but make it worth my lunch." Josiah sat. He told it straight. No embellishment, no emotion. The cellar, the padlock, the rope marks, the 47 days. The land deed signed under duress. The water rights Harlan hadn't gotten yet. He told it the way Pruitt liked facts, sequence evidence. Pruitt didn't interrupt. He cut his roast beef into precise squares and ate them one at a time while Josiah talked. When Josiah finished, Pruitt set down his fork and wiped his mouth with a cloth napkin. "You're telling me Harlan Calloway imprisoned his adult daughter in a root cellar to coerce a property transfer?" "Yes, sir." "And the property in question includes water rights filed by the late Ruth Calloway?" "Yes, sir." "Water rights that, if I'm not mistaken, service irrigation to several downstream properties." Pruitt paused. "Including mine?" "Yes, sir." Pruitt folded the napkin. "That's a conflict of interest, Mr. Crane. You understand that?" "I do, but I'm telling you anyway because the alternative is a girl goes back to a cellar." "Has a complaint been filed with the sheriff?" "Not yet. Sheriff Briggs holds a gambling marker with Harlan. $300. Pruitt's eyes sharpened. "You're certain of that?" "The girl told me. She's been listening through cellar walls for 47 days. She knows things her father doesn't think she knows." Pruitt leaned back in his chair. He was quiet for a long time, long enough that the waiter came and refilled his water glass and left again. "I can't rule on a deed dispute that affects my own property without disclosure. But I can refer the matter to the circuit judge in Salina, and I can issue a temporary order preventing the transfer of any property rights pending review." "How fast?" "I can draft it this afternoon." "And the imprisonment?" "That's a criminal matter. That goes to the sheriff, conflicted or not. If Briggs won't act, the U.S. Marshal out of Topeka will." Josiah nodded. "There's one more thing. The girl's mother kept a journal. Detailed records of abuse going back years. They're retrieving it now." "From where?" "From the Calloway house." Pruitt raised an eyebrow. "That's bold." The girl insisted. "I imagine she did." Pruitt picked up his fork again. "Bring me that journal, Mr. Crane, and bring me the girl. I want to hear her testimony directly." He speared a square of beef. "I've known Harlan Calloway for 15 years. Watched him decline since the war. I always figured it was his business. Appears I was wrong about that." Josiah stood. "Thank you, Judge." "Don't thank me. I'm doing my job. Somebody should have made me do it sooner." Josiah left the hotel and rode hard back toward the Calloway property. He knew Maeve had told him to stay away, but a feeling had settled in his gut that wouldn't leave. The kind of feeling a man gets when he knows he sent someone else into a fight he should have walked into himself. He was a mile out when he heard the shouting. He spurred Slate into a run. The Calloway place came into view, and Josiah saw Harlan on the front porch with a shotgun broken open over his arm. Levi stood in the yard with his hands raised, palms out. Nettie was behind Levi, clutching a leather-bound book to her chest. They'd found the journal, but Harlan had found them. "That's my property!" Harlan screamed, pointing at the book. "She's stealing from my house. My house." "She's taking what belongs to her mother," Levi said, voice steady despite the shotgun. "Put the gun down, Mr. Calloway. You're Maeve Dunlap's boy. I should have known. Your mother's been sniffing around here all summer like a dog after scraps. Get off my land." "Not without Nettie." Harlan snapped the shotgun closed. Levi didn't flinch, but his hands shook. Just barely. Nettie stepped out from behind Levi. "Father." Harlan's eyes locked on her. Something moved across his face, fast and ugly. Not anger. Ownership. The look of a man staring at something that got loose. "You come home," he said, and his voice dropped low the way it always did before the worst of it. "You come home right now and we'll forget this whole thing. I'll unlock the cellar. You can sleep in your room. We'll talk about the papers in the morning." "You'll unlock the cellar?" Nettie repeated. "You hear yourself. You'll unlock the cellar like that's a kindness. Like 47 days in the ground is something you can undo with a night in a bed. I kept you safe. You kept me prisoner." "Same thing." Harlan's voice cracked. He gripped the shotgun tighter. "You think the world out there is kind to a girl with no mother and no husband? You think these people care about you? They'll use you up and spit you out, and I'm the only one who... You chained me. You starved me. You made me sign away Mama's land while I sat in the dark. That land is family land. It's my land. Mama left it to me, not you, me." The air between them was so tight it hummed. Harlan took one step off the porch. Levi shifted his weight, ready to move. Nettie held the journal tighter. Josiah rode into the yard at a walk, deliberate, and stopped between Harlan and the others. He didn't reach for anything. He just sat on Slate and let his presence fill the space. "Harlan," Josiah said. "You." Harlan's face twisted. "You're the one who took her. You broke into my cellar and stole my daughter." "I opened a locked door and helped a woman walk out. There's a difference." "She's not a woman. She's my child." "She's 22 years old, Harlan. She's not a child. She's a property owner whose father forged a deed transfer under duress." "Forged." Harlan laughed high and mean. "She signed it herself, willingly. Ask anyone. I'll ask Judge Pruitt. He's expecting us this afternoon." The name hit Harlan like a punch. His face went white, then red, then something in between that looked like fear, wearing anger as a mask. Pruitt has no business in this. He does when the water rights in question feed his own ranch. He's already drafting a temporary order to freeze all property transfers. Harlan's knuckles went white on the shotgun. "You don't know what you're doing, Crane. You're a fence mender, a cow pusher. You have no idea what's at stake here. I know what 47 marks on a cellar post look like. I know what rope burns look like on a girl's wrists. And I know what a mother's journal full of dated entries looks like to a judge who cares about evidence." Harlan looked at the journal in Nettie's arms. His eyes widened. "Where did you... That's not Ruth, didn't..." "She did," Nettie said. "Every day, Father. Every bruise, every threat, every night you came home drunk and broke something. She wrote it all down. She dated it. She named witnesses. And she hid it where you'd never think to look, because she knew you'd destroy it." Harlan's arm dropped. The shotgun hung loose at his side. For one moment, just one, Josiah saw the man Harlan might have been before the war, before the whiskey, before whatever broke inside him. A man who looked at his daughter and realized she'd been preparing for this longer than he'd been planning. "Give me that book," Harlan said, but the command had gone out of his voice. "Nettie, please." "No. I'm your father." "You were." You stopped being my father the night you locked that cellar door for the first time and walked away while I screamed." Harlan's chin trembled. He looked at Josiah, then at Levi, then back at Nettie. 3 people standing between him and everything he'd spent 4 years trying to control. "This ain't over," he said. "You're right," Nettie replied. "It's not, but the part where I do what you tell me, that part's over." Josiah reached down and offered his hand to Nettie. She took it and swung up onto Slate behind him. Levi mounted his own horse and turned toward the road. Harlan stood in his yard with the shotgun hanging at his side and watched them ride away. He didn't call out. He didn't chase them. He just stood there, shrinking in the distance, and for the first time in 47 days, Nettie didn't look back to count the hours. They rode into Abilene in silence. But it wasn't the silence of fear. It was the silence of people who knew the next few hours would change everything and wanted to be ready for it. Maeve was waiting outside the store. She saw the journal in Nettie's hands and pressed her fist against her mouth. "Ruth's journal." "Every page," Nettie said. "Prewitt's expecting us," Josiah said. Maeve turned to Levi. "What happened at the house?" "Harlan had a shotgun. He didn't use it." Maeve looked at her son for a long moment. Then she pulled him into a hug, hard and fast. The kind that says everything a mother can't say in front of other people. Levi let her hold on for exactly 3 seconds before he stepped back and cleared his throat. "Let's go see the judge," he said. The 4 of them walked to the hotel together. Josiah in front, Nettie beside him, Maeve and Levi behind. People noticed. In a town like Abilene, 4 people walking with purpose toward the hotel at midday was as loud as a gunshot. A man named Carl Drucker, who worked the livery stable and drank with Harlan on Saturdays, stepped off the boardwalk and watched them pass. He didn't say anything, but Josiah saw him turn and walk the other direction toward the saloon where Harlan would likely be heading. "We just lost the element of surprise," Josiah muttered. "We never had it," Nettie said. "In this town, everybody knows everything before it happens. The question is, who gets to the judge first with the better story?" They found Pruitt in his room on the 2nd floor, seated at a writing desk with the temporary order already half drafted. He stood when they entered, and his eyes went straight to Nettie. "Miss Calloway." "Judge Pruitt." "Sit down." He gestured to the chairs. "I have questions and I'll need honest answers. Not brave ones, not careful ones, honest ones. Can you do that?" "I've been honest my whole life, sir. It's the reason I spent 47 days underground." Pruitt studied her. Then he picked up his pen and said, "Start from the beginning." Nettie talked for 40 minutes. She didn't cry, didn't waver, didn't embellish. She told Pruitt about the night her father first locked the cellar, about the rope he used to tie her wrists to an iron ring, about the 3 meals he brought that dwindled to 2, then 1, then whatever he remembered. She told him about the deed he put in front of her on day 12 and the pen he pressed into her hand. She told him about the water rights paper he brought on day 30, and the fact that she refused, and what happened after she refused. She told him about the marks on the post, 1 for each day, carved with her fingernail because he'd taken everything sharp. Pruitt wrote it all down. When she finished, he asked to see the journal. Nettie handed it over. He opened it to the first page, read for a full minute in silence, then closed it. "This is dated. Every entry. And these names, she mentions these are people still living in Abilene. Most of them. Maeve is mentioned. So is Dr. Hensley. So is Reverend Pike. I'll need to speak with them." Pruitt set the journal beside his papers. "Miss Calloway, I'm going to issue a temporary restraining order against your father. He is not to approach you this hotel, the Crane Ranch, or the Dunlap store. The deed transfer will be frozen pending a full hearing before the circuit judge in Salina. And the criminal matter. I'll send word to Sheriff Briggs today. If he fails to act within 48 hours, I'll contact the U.S. Marshal directly." Pruitt paused. "I should tell you, Miss Calloway, your father will fight this. He'll hire a lawyer if he can afford one, and he'll call every favor he's owed. This won't be quick, and it won't be painless. Pain is 47 days in a cellar, Nettie said. This is just paperwork. Pruitt almost smiled. You sound like your mother. I'll take that as the highest compliment anyone's ever given me. They left the hotel as the afternoon sun tilted west. Maeve walked beside Nettie, one hand on the girl's elbow, not guiding her, but grounding her. Levi fell into step on Nettie's other side. Josiah walked a step behind, watching the street. They were halfway to the store when Sheriff Briggs stepped out of the alley between the bank and the barber shop. He stood in the middle of the boardwalk, arms crossed, badge catching the light. Miss Calloway, Briggs said, your father filed a complaint this morning. Says you were taken from his home against your will. Against his will, Nettie corrected. Not mine. Briggs shifted his weight. He was a big man, thick through the middle, with the look of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. He says you're not well. Says you've been having episodes. He says a lot of things. Did he mention the padlock on the cellar? Or the rope burns on my wrists? Nettie held up her bandaged wrists. Did he mention 47 days, Sheriff? Briggs looked at the bandages. Something flickered behind his eyes, but it died fast. I need to hear both sides. Then hear mine, right now, right here. This isn't the place. Judge Pruitt already heard it. He's issuing a restraining order and freezing the property transfer. You can take my statement now, or you can explain to the circuit judge in Salina why you didn't. Briggs's face went through 3 colors in 2 seconds. He looked at Josiah. You did this. I opened a door, Josiah said. You stuck your nose in a family matter. A locked cellar isn't a family matter. It's a crime. Briggs uncrossed his arms. He looked up and down the street. People were watching from doorways, from windows, from the boardwalk across the way. Carl Drucker stood outside the saloon. 2 women from the church auxiliary had stopped in front of the milliner's shop. The town was watching. Come to my office, Briggs said finally. I'll take the statement. And the arrest? Maeve asked. Briggs didn't answer. He turned and walked toward the jail. Nettie followed. Josiah, Maeve, and Levi walked with her. Inside the sheriff's office, Nettie gave her statement. Every word measured every detail sharp. Briggs wrote slowly, his pen scratching against the paper like it weighed 100 pounds. When Nettie finished, Briggs set the pen down and rubbed his face with both hands. I'll ride out to the Calloway place tonight, he said. To arrest him? Nettie asked. Briggs looked at her. To talk to him. Talk. Nettie's voice went flat. You're going to talk to the man who locked his daughter in a cellar for 7 weeks. I need to hear his side. You already know his side. You play cards with him every Saturday. The room went still. Briggs's face hardened. That's got nothing to do with this. $300 says it does. Briggs stood up so fast his chair hit the wall. You watch yourself, girl. Josiah stepped forward. Not between them, just forward. Just enough. She's a witness and a victim giving a sworn statement in your office, Sheriff. You might want to remember that. Briggs stared at Josiah for 5 long seconds. Then he sat back down, straightened the paper, and said, I'll ride out tonight. They left the office. The sun was low and orange, throwing long shadows across the street. Nettie walked out last, and as she stepped onto the boardwalk, she stopped. Harlan Calloway was standing across the street. He wasn't drunk. He wasn't angry. He was clean-shaven, wearing his good coat and standing beside a man in a suit that Josiah didn't recognize. That's Emmett Slade, Maeve whispered. Lawyer from Salina. Harlan already hired himself an attorney. Harlan looked at Nettie across the dusty street. He tipped his hat, just barely. And then he turned and walked into the saloon with Slade at his side, leaving the 4 of them standing on the boardwalk with a statement filed, a journal recovered, and the sudden understanding that Harlan Calloway had been playing a longer game than any of them realized. Nettie's hands curled into fists at her sides. Her bandaged wrists stood out white against the evening air. "He's not fighting like a drunk anymore," she said quietly. "No," Josiah agreed. "He's not." Emmett Slade moved fast. By the next morning, word had already spread through Abilene like a brush fire. Harlan Calloway wasn't just some drunk fighting to keep his daughter. He was a wronged father, a war veteran, a man pushed to desperate measures by grief, and a daughter who'd gone unstable after her mother's death. Josiah heard the new version of the story before he'd finished his first cup of coffee. A rider from town, a young man named Pete Holm, who helped at the livery, brought it out to the ranch along with a bag of grain Josiah had ordered. "Folks are talking Mr. Crane," Pete said, shifting on his feet. "Mr. Slade went through the saloon last night buying rounds and telling everybody how Harlan's been trying to get his daughter help. Says she tears at her own wrists. Says she locks herself in small spaces because of the melancholia. And people believe that." Pete looked at the ground. "Some do. Some want to. It's easier than the other thing." Josiah paid for the grain and sent Pete on his way. Then he walked to the barn where Nettie was brushing copper. She'd been up since dawn working with the horses like a woman who needed her hands busy to keep her mind from spinning. "Slade's already talking," Josiah said. "I know. I heard Pete." Nettie didn't stop brushing. "He's telling them I'm crazy. He's telling them a version that makes your father look like a saint." "That's the version my father's been telling for years. Slade just gave it a suit and a legal brief." She set the brush down and leaned against Copper's flank. What did Pete's face look like when he said it? Uncomfortable. That means he half believes it. Multiply that by every man in town who'd rather believe a father than a daughter, and you've got Slade's jury pool. Josiah leaned on the stall door. Prewitt's order went through. Property transfer is frozen. That won't stop Slade. He'll challenge Prewitt's jurisdiction. He'll say Prewitt has a conflict because of the water rights. He'll ask for the whole thing to be moved to a judge in Salina who's never met me and never met my mother. You think Slade's that good? I think my father hired him for a reason. Harlan Calloway is a drunk and a gambler, but he's not stupid. He never was. That's what makes him dangerous. Josiah studied her. She was thinking 3 moves ahead, and she'd been doing it since she was 19 years old. What do? We get to the people in that journal before Slade does. Dr. Hensley treated my mother for bruises she said came from a fall. Reverend Pike visited our house the night my father threw a chair through the window. Mrs. Aldrich next door heard me screaming the first night he locked me in the cellar. If Slade gets to them first and convinces them to stay quiet, that journal is just a dead woman's word against a living man's lawyer. Then we go now. Nettie shook her head. Not we, me and Maeve. Dr. Hensley won't talk to a man about this. He'll feel like he's being accused of missing the signs. He needs to hear it from someone who isn't going to make him feel like a coward. He needs to hear it from a woman who makes him feel like he can still do the right thing. Josiah didn't like it, but he recognized the logic. What do you want me to do? Go to Judge Prewitt. Tell him Slade's already poisoning the well. Ask him to move the hearing up. The longer we wait, the more time Slade has to build a wall between the truth and the people who saw it. They rode to Abilene together, but split at the edge of town. Nettie went to Maeve's store. Josiah went to the hotel. He found Prewitt's door locked. A note pinned to the frame read, "Court business in Salina. Return Thursday." Thursday was 4 days away. Josiah stood in the hallway and felt the ground shift under him. Prewitt was gone. Slade was working. And Harlan Calloway had 4 days of open road to do whatever he wanted. He rode to Maeve's store at a trot. Nettie and Maeve were already inside, bent over the journal at the counter. Levi stood by the window watching the street. "Prewitt's gone to Salina," Josiah said. Nettie's head snapped up. "When did he leave?" "This morning. Note says Thursday." "That's not a coincidence." Nettie looked at Maeve. "Slade moved a case to the Salina docket. He pulled Pruitt out of town on purpose. Can he do that? Levi asked from the window. He didn't have to do it legally. He just had to file a motion that required Pruitt's presence. Even a frivolous one buys 4 days. Nettie pressed her palms flat on the counter. 4 days. That's all Slade needs. Needs for what? Josiah asked. To build a case that I'm incompetent. If Slade can get a doctor to declare me mentally unfit before the hearing, the deed transfer stands. My signature holds, and my testimony becomes the ramblings of a disturbed girl. The room went cold despite the summer heat. He can't get a doctor to say that, Maeve said. Hensley knows you. He knows you're sound. Slade doesn't need Hensley. He just needs a doctor. Any doctor. There are physicians in Salina and Topeka who've never met me and will sign whatever Slade puts in front of them for the right fee. That's corruption, Levi said. That's Kansas, Nettie replied. Maeve straightened up. Then we don't wait for Thursday. We go to the witnesses today, right now, and we get their statements in writing before Slade can touch them. Nettie nodded. Dr. Hensley first, then Reverend Pike, then Mrs. Aldrich. I'll come with you to Hensley, Maeve said. Josiah, take Levi and find Mrs. Aldrich. She lives 3 doors down from the Calloway place. She's old and she's scared, but she heard what she heard. They split up. Josiah and Levi rode east. Maeve and Nettie walked to Dr. Hensley's office on the north end of town. Hensley's office was above the apothecary. Nettie climbed the stairs with Maeve behind her. She knocked. Footsteps inside. The door opened. Dr. Thomas Hensley was a thin man with spectacles and the permanent stoop of someone who spent too much time bending over patients. He looked at Nettie, and his face went through surprise recognition and something that looked a lot like dread. Nettie Calloway. Dr. Hensley, may we come in? He hesitated, just half a second, but Nettie caught it. He stepped aside and let them in. I heard you were staying with Josiah Crane, Hensley said, not meeting her eyes. Your father came by yesterday, said you'd had another episode. My father locked me in a root cellar for 47 days. Hensley's hands went still on the desk. He said, I know what he said. I'm telling you what happened. Nettie held up her bandaged wrists. These aren't from melancholia. These are from rope tied to an iron ring. Hensley stared at the bandages. I treated your mother once. She said she fell. She didn't fall. You knew she didn't fall. You wrote it in your records as a fall because that's what she told you, and you didn't push. Hensley took off his spectacles and cleaned them. His hands shook. That's a fair accusation. It's not an accusation, Doctor. It's a fact. And I'm not here to blame you. I'm here to give you a chance to do what you couldn't do for my mother. Maeve spoke up. We need a written statement, Thomas. What you observed when you treated Ruth, the injuries, your professional opinion on whether they were consistent with a fall. If I write that I'm calling Harlan Calloway a liar, in this town that carries a cost. The cost of not writing it is a girl goes back to a cellar, Maeve said. Ruth is dead, Thomas. Nettie's alive. Pick which one you can still help. Hensley put his spectacles back on. He sat down at his desk, pulled out a sheet of paper, and picked up his pen. I treated Ruth Calloway on 3 occasions. The injuries were not consistent with falls. He looked up. Is that what you need? Dates, Nettie said. Details, everything you remember. Hensley nodded and began to write. Across town, Josiah and Levi knocked on Mrs. Aldrich's door. She was 72 years old, stooped and white-haired, and she opened the door just wide enough to see who was standing there. Mrs. Aldrich, I'm Josiah Crane. This is Levi Dunlap. I know who you are, Maeve's boy. She looked at Levi. Your mother sent you. Yes, ma'am. About Nettie. Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Aldrich opened the door wider. I was wondering when somebody would finally ask. She led them to a small sitting room. I heard her, you know, the first night, screaming. I told myself it was an animal, told myself that for 47 nights. 47, Josiah repeated. I counted, every night, because I knew it wasn't an animal, and I was too old and too scared to do anything about it. Tears ran down her creased face, but her voice held. What do you need from me? A written statement, Josiah said. What you heard when you heard it, and how long it lasted. I'll write it. I'll sign it. I'll swear it in front of God and Judge Pruitt and anyone else who asks. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I owe that girl that much. I owe Ruth more. By the time the sun reached its peak, they had 3 statements. Hensley's misses, Aldrich's, and a third from Reverend Pike, who Maeve had caught coming out of the church. Pike's statement was shorter, but devastating. He'd visited the Calloway home 2 years prior and witnessed Harlan strike Ruth across the face at the dinner table. He'd prayed about it. He'd never reported it. Prayed about it, Nettie said, when Maeve told her. Her voice was steady, but her jaw was tight. He watched my father hit my mother, and he prayed about it. He's willing to testify now, Maeve said. Because it's safe now. Because there's a judge and a lawyer, and enough people standing up that he doesn't have to stand alone. Nettie folded the statements and tucked them inside the journal. I'm not grateful. I should be, but I'm not. Every one of these people watched my family fall apart and chose comfort over courage. And now they're choosing courage, Maeve said quietly. Late courage is still courage, Nettie. Tell that to my mother. The silence that followed was heavy enough to hold. They gathered at Maeve's store that afternoon, all 4 of them around the counter, with the journal and 3 sworn statements spread between them. Nettie organized the papers with the precision of someone who understood that her life depended on the order of the words on these pages. We have enough to present to the circuit judge in Salina, Nettie said, but we need to get there before Slade files his competency motion. How do we know he hasn't already? Levi asked. Because he needs a doctor's signature first, and that takes at least 2 days, even for a crooked one. So we have 2 days, Josiah said. Less. If my father is smart, and he's already sent Slade to Salina with instructions. The doctor will examine me based on Slade's description alone. I won't even be in the room when they declare me unfit. They can do that without examining you. Levi's voice carried a sharpness that hadn't been there before. A declaration of mental incompetence requires a physician's opinion, but the physician doesn't have to examine the patient directly if a family member provides testimony. It's a loophole big enough to drive a wagon through. Maeve slammed her hand on the counter. Then, we drive our own wagon through it first. We take these statements and the journal to Salina ourselves. We file them with the circuit court before Slade files his motion. And we demand that any competency examination be done in person by a physician of Nettie's choosing. Can we do that? Josiah asked. I don't know, Nettie admitted. But I know that showing up with evidence is better than sitting here waiting for a man in a suit to decide my mind is broken. Then we ride to Salina, Josiah said. Tomorrow morning. Tonight, Nettie corrected. We ride tonight. If Slade has a 2-day head start, we can't afford to waste 12 hours sleeping. Josiah looked at her. She was running on willpower and coffee, and something deeper than both. Something that had kept her counting marks on a post for 47 days without losing her mind. Tonight, he agreed. They spent the next 2 hours preparing. Maeve packed food and water. Levi checked the horses. Josiah loaded the wagon with blankets and the lockbox where they'd keep the documents. Nettie sat at the counter and wrote. Not a letter. A list. Names, dates, amounts. Every gambling debt her father owed every man he'd borrowed from every favor he'd collected. She'd been listening through the cellar walls for 7 weeks, and she'd remembered everything. How do you know all this? Josiah asked, watching her write. My father talks to himself when he drinks. He doesn't know he does it, but he does. He'd sit above the cellar with a bottle and go through his debts out loud like he was keeping a ledger in his head. I couldn't write it down, so I memorized it. All of it. Every name, Every number, every threat he made about what he'd do if they didn't give him more time. She set the pen down. My father thought the cellar made me helpless. He didn't realize it made me dangerous. Maeve came out of the back room with a traveling bag. She stopped when she saw the list. What's that? Insurance, Nettie said. They left Abilene at dusk. Josiah drove the wagon. Nettie sat beside him. Maeve and Levi followed on horseback. The road to Salina was 40 miles of hard prairie, and they'd be riding through the night. 3 hours and Levi pulled his horse alongside the wagon. Rider behind us, half-mile back. Josiah didn't turn around. How many? Just one. Moving fast. Matching our pace. When we slow, he slows. Nettie's hands tightened on the edge of the wagon seat. My father wouldn't come alone. It's not your father, Levi said. Horse is too small, rider sits too straight. Slade, Josiah said. Or someone Slade sent to see where we're going. Josiah pulled the wagon to a stop. The rider behind them stopped too. Stars were thick overhead, and the prairie was flat enough to see a figure on horseback half a mile back. We keep going, Nettie said. If he knows we're headed to Salina, Slade will know too. He'll have time to prepare. He'll know anyway. There's only one reason we'd ride east at night. Let him follow. Let Slade prepare. I'd rather fight a man who knows I'm coming than sneak around like I've got something to hide. Josiah looked at her in the starlight. You've been thinking about this a long time. 47 days is a long time to think. They rode on. The rider followed. Mile after mile, holding that same half-mile distance. Levi dropped back twice to get a better look. The second time, he came back with information. It's Carl Drucker, from the livery. He works for Slade now. Drucker's harmless, Maeve said. Harmless men stop being harmless when someone pays them enough, Nettie replied. Near midnight, they stopped to water the horses at a creek crossing. Nettie climbed down from the wagon and stretched her legs. Josiah watched her walk to the creek's edge and crouched down, cupping water in her hands. You should sleep, he said. Can't. You'll need to be sharp when we get to Salina. I'm always sharp. That's not vanity. It's survival. She stood and wiped her hands on her skirt. Josiah. Yeah? Why did your wife pick that chestnut mare? The question caught him off guard. Sarah liked her eyes. Said she had kind eyes for a horse. She was right. Copper is the first animal that didn't flinch when I touched her. Nettie paused. Your wife sounds like she was good at seeing things. She was good at everything. I'm sorry you lost her. I'm sorry you lost your mother. They stood by the creek in the dark, and for a moment, neither of them was a rescuer or a victim or a witness. They were just two people who understood what it meant to lose someone who made the world make sense. Levi appeared from the darkness. Drucker stopped. He's making camp about a quarter mile back. He's not following anymore tonight. He doesn't need to, Nettie said. He already knows where we're going. They watered the horses, loaded back up, and pushed on through the night. Maeve dozed in her saddle, held steady by years of riding. Levi kept watch behind them. Josiah drove, and Nettie sat beside him with a journal in her lap and her mother's words pressed against her legs, riding toward a courthouse in a town where nobody knew her name. Dawn found them 10 miles outside Salina. Nettie had finally slept leaning against the wagon frame with the journal clutched to her chest. She woke when the wheels hit a rut and sat up straight, instantly alert. How far? She asked. Close. We'll be there before the courthouse opens. Nettie smoothed her hair and straightened her dress. It was still the same dress from the cellar, washed but not replaced. Maeve had offered her clothes, but Nettie refused. I want the judge to see what 47 days looks like, she'd said. They rolled into Salina as the town came to life. Josiah parked the wagon outside the courthouse. Maeve dismounted and tied her horse beside Levi's. The four of them stood on the courthouse steps and watched the sun come up over a town that didn't know them yet. Whatever happens in there, Nettie said, I want you all to know that I chose this. Nobody dragged me here. Nobody made me fight. I'm here because my mother left me something worth fighting for, and my father tried to steal it. And I'd rather lose in that courtroom than win by staying quiet." "You're not going to lose," Levi said. Nettie looked at him. "You can't promise that." "No. But I can promise I'll be standing right there when they make the decision. And so will my mother. And so will Josiah." The courthouse doors opened. A clerk stepped out, looked at the 4 dusty, road-worn people standing on his steps, and raised an eyebrow. "We need to file an emergency petition with the circuit court," Nettie said. "And we need to see a judge before a lawyer named Emmett Slade files anything first." The clerk looked at her bandaged wrists at the journal she held at the 3 people standing behind her like a wall. "Come inside," he said. They walked into the courthouse single file. Nettie first back straight wrists wrapped in white bandages that caught the morning light. Behind her, Maeve, Levi, and Josiah. 4 people from Abilene who'd ridden through the night because a girl who spent 47 days underground refused to let one more day pass without a fight. And somewhere behind them, Carl Drucker was already riding hard back toward Abilene to tell Harlan Calloway that his daughter had just walked into the one building where chains and cellars and padlocks didn't mean a thing. The clerk's name was Howard Marsh, and he moved like a man who'd seen enough desperate people walk through courthouse doors to know when the desperation was real. He led them down a narrow hallway to a room with a long table and told them to wait. Nettie set the journal on the table. She placed the 3 sworn statements beside it. Then she placed her own handwritten list of Harlan's debts and favors next to those. She arranged them with care edges, aligned like she was building something out of paper that had to be strong enough to hold. "The circuit judge is Arthur Waverly," the clerk said from the doorway. "He starts at 8 sharp. I'll let him know you're here." "Has anyone else filed this morning?" Nettie asked. Marsh hesitated. "A Mr. Slade filed a motion yesterday afternoon, competency review. It's on Judge Waverly's docket for Thursday." "Yesterday afternoon," Nettie repeated. She looked at Josiah. "He filed it before we even left Abilene. He knew Pruitt would be gone. He planned the whole thing." "Can we file before the hearing?" Maeve asked. "You can file anything you want," Marsh said. "Whether the judge hears it first is up to him." He left. The 4 of them sat around the table in a room that smelled like old paper and floor wax. Nettie opened the journal and turned to the last entry. Ruth Calloway's final words, written in a hand that was already weakening. "What does it say?" Levi asked quietly. Nettie read it aloud, her voice steady. "April 14th, 1874. Harlan came home at 3 in the morning. He broke the kitchen chair and told me if I ever tried to leave, he'd make sure Nettie never left either. I believe him. God help me, I believe him. I'm hiding this journal tonight. If something happens to me, Nettie will know where to find it. She's smart, smarter than he knows, smarter than I was." Nobody spoke. Maeve pressed her hand over her mouth. Levi stared at the table. Josiah sat very still. "That was 4 years ago," Nettie said. "She died 6 months later, and my father started on me the same year." The door opened. Judge Arthur Waverly walked in. He was younger than Pruitt, maybe 50, with a sharp jaw and eyes that didn't waste time on pleasantries. He carried a folder in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. "I've got a competency motion filed by one Emmett Slade on behalf of Harlan Calloway," Waverly said, sitting down without greeting anyone. "And I've got 4 people from Abilene who rode through the night to beat it. Somebody tell me why I should listen to you first." Nettie stood. "Because the competency motion is a fraud, Your Honor. My father filed it to prevent me from testifying about a forced property transfer. He locked me in a root cellar for 47 days and coerced me into signing a deed under duress. I have my mother's journal documenting years of abuse, 3 sworn statements from witnesses in Abilene, and the rope burns on my wrists to prove it." Waverly looked at her wrists, then at the papers on the table, then at her face. "Sit down, Miss Calloway. Start from the beginning, and don't leave anything out." Nettie sat. She talked for 30 minutes. No tears, no trembling, no performance. Just facts delivered with the precision of someone who'd rehearsed them in a dark cellar for 47 days because she had nothing else to do. Waverly read the journal entries Nettie pointed him to. He read Hensley's statement. He read Mrs. Aldrich's statement. He read Reverend Pike's statement. He read Nettie's list of her father's debts. When he finished, he closed the journal and looked at Nettie. This list of debts, how did you compile it? My father talked to himself when he drank. He sat above the cellar most nights and went through his finances out loud. I memorized everything. You memorized specific amounts and names while locked underground. I had 47 days with nothing to do but listen and remember. Waverly leaned back. Miss Calloway, I'm going to be direct with you. Mr. Slade's motion claims you suffer from melancholia and are not competent to manage your own affairs. The motion is supported by an affidavit from a Dr. Franklin Poole in Salina, who states that based on your father's description of your behavior, you exhibit signs of chronic mental instability. Dr. Poole has never examined me. I'm aware of that. It's noted in the affidavit. And he's willing to declare me incompetent based on the word of the man who locked me in a cellar. Waverly's jaw tightened. The law allows family testimony in competency proceedings. It's a provision I've never liked, but it exists. Then examine me yourself. Nettie leaned forward. Right now. Ask me anything. Test my memory, my reasoning, my judgment. If I'm incompetent, you'll know. And if I'm not, then Dr. Poole's affidavit is a bought opinion from a man who never looked me in the eye. The room was silent. Waverly studied her for a long moment. Then he turned to his clerk, who had appeared in the doorway. Send for Dr. Harmon. Tell him I need an independent examination. Today. Your Honor. The clerk started. Today, Howard. The clerk left. Waverly stood. I'm going to recess until Dr. Harmon arrives. Miss Calloway, you and your party will remain in this building. Mr. Slade is due in my courtroom at 2 o'clock for a separate matter. I expect he'll learn you're here. Be prepared for that. He walked out. The door closed. Nettie exhaled. It was the first time Josiah had seen her let go of anything since he'd found her in that cellar. You did good, Maeve said. I did what my mother would have done. She just never got the chance. Levi stood by the window watching the street. Someone's coming. Suit, walking fast. Slade, Nettie said without looking. 2 minutes later, the door burst open. Emmett Slade walked in like he owned the room. He was mid-40s, lean with the kind of face that smiled while it calculated. Behind him, to everyone's surprise, walked Harlan Calloway. Nettie stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. Josiah moved beside her. Maeve stepped forward. Levi turned from the window. Miss Calloway, Slade said smoothly. What a pleasant surprise. Get him out of here, Nettie said, her eyes locked on her father. Judge Pruitt issued a restraining order. He's not supposed to be within 100 feet of me. Judge Pruitt's order applies in Dickinson County, Slade replied. We're in Saline County, different jurisdiction. That's a technicality. The law is made of technicalities, Miss Calloway. That's what makes it useful. Harlan hadn't spoken. He stood behind Slade, clean-shaven, sober, wearing his good coat again. He looked at Nettie with an expression that might have passed for sadness if you didn't know what lived behind it. Nettie, he said, I just want to talk. You had 47 days to talk. You spent them locking a door. I was trying to protect you. You were trying to steal from me. Slade raised a hand. Mr. Calloway, I'll handle this. Miss Calloway, your father has authorized me to make an offer. He'll withdraw the competency motion and release all claims to the water rights if you agree to return the land deed transfer and drop any criminal complaints. The room went dead quiet. He wants me to give back the land, Nettie said slowly, and pretend the cellar never happened. He wants to resolve this as a family matter, quietly, without the cost and spectacle of a trial. Without consequences, you mean? Slade shrugged. Consequences are what courts decide. I'm offering you something a court can't piece. Nettie looked at her father. "Is that what you want, Father Peace?" Harlan's face worked. "I want my daughter back. You never lost me. You caged me. There's a difference. I made mistakes. You chained my wrists to an iron ring. I was drinking. I wasn't myself. You were exactly yourself. The drinking just made you stop pretending." Harlan's composure cracked. His eyes went wet and his voice dropped. "Your mother would have wanted us to work this out." Nettie went rigid. Josiah saw it happen, saw the anger flash white-hot behind her eyes before she pulled it back under control. When she spoke, her voice was so quiet the room had to lean in to hear it. "Don't you dare. Don't you dare use her name. She wrote about you. Every night you came home drunk. Every bruise, every threat. She hid a journal under my floorboards because she knew you'd destroy it, and she trusted me to find it when the time came. You didn't know her. You owned her. And when she died, you started owning me." Harlan stepped back like she'd hit him. Slade moved in smoothly. "Miss Calloway, emotional outbursts won't serve you well in front of Judge Waverly." "That wasn't an outburst, Mr. Slade. That was testimony." The door opened behind them. Judge Waverly stepped in, followed by an older man with a medical bag. Dr. William Harmon, Selena's most respected physician. Waverly surveyed the room. His eyes landed on Harlan and Slade. "Mr. Slade, I didn't send for you. I heard my client's daughter was in the building. I came to facilitate a resolution." "You came to intimidate a witness in my courthouse. Mr. Calloway, there is a restraining order against you. I don't care which county issued it. You will wait outside this building, or I will have you removed." "Your Honor," Slade began. "Outside, now." Harlan looked at Nettie one last time. Then he turned and walked out. Slade followed, but at the door he paused and looked back at Nettie. "The offer stands." "No," Nettie said. "It doesn't." Slade left. Waverly closed the door and introduced Dr. Harmon. "Doctor, I need you to conduct a mental competency examination of Miss Calloway. Take your time. Be thorough. I want your honest professional opinion, not a favor." "I don't do favors, Arthur," Harmon said dryly. He turned to Nettie. "Miss Calloway, would you prefer this examination to be private?" "No. I want everyone in this room to hear it. I want it on record." Harmon nodded and sat down across from her. The examination took an hour. He asked about her memory, her reasoning, her emotional state. He asked her to recall details from the journal. He asked her to explain the water rights, the legal situation, the timeline of events. He asked her to count backward from 100 by sevens. He asked her to explain the difference between grief and depression. Nettie answered everything with the same clear-eyed precision she'd shown since the cellar door opened. When Harmon finished, he stood, put his instruments back in his bag, and faced Judge Waverly. "This woman is not mentally incompetent. She is not suffering from melancholia, hysteria, or any condition that would impair her judgment or legal capacity. In my professional opinion, she is one of the sharpest minds I've examined this year, and whoever signed that affidavit without meeting her should be ashamed of himself." Waverly nodded. "Thank you, Doctor. That will be entered into the record." "Arthur." "Yes. That girl spent 47 days locked underground. She doesn't need a competency hearing. She needs the man who did it held accountable." Harmon tipped his hat to Nettie and left. Waverly sat down at the head of the table. He folded his hands. "Miss Calloway, based on the evidence presented, your mother's journal, 3 sworn witness statements, Dr. Harmon's examination, and the physical evidence of restraint on your wrists, I am prepared to issue the following orders. First, Mr. Slade's competency motion is denied. Second, the deed transfer for the 40 acres south of the Smoky Hill River is hereby voided as signed under duress. Third, the water rights filed by Ruth Calloway remain in your name uncontested. Fourth, I am referring the matter of your imprisonment to the U.S. Marshal's Office for criminal investigation, as the local sheriff may have a conflict of interest." "And my father?" Nettie asked. "Your father will be arrested, Miss Calloway. Not today, perhaps, but soon. The wheels turn slow, but they turn." Nettie closed her eyes, just for a moment. When she opened them, they were bright but steady. "Thank you, Your Honor." "Don't thank me. Thank your mother. She built the case from her grave. You just delivered it." Waverly gathered his papers and left the room. The door clicked shut. And then it was just the four of them sitting around a table covered in paper that had just changed everything. Maeve was the first to move. She walked around the table and pulled Nettie into her arms. Nettie didn't resist. She didn't cry either. She just stood there and let someone hold her, maybe for the first time in 4 years. "Your mother would be proud," Maeve whispered. "My mother would be furious it took this long," Nettie whispered back. Josiah stood by the door, hat in his hands. Levi stood beside him. Neither of them spoke. Some moments don't need words from the men in the room. They just need the men to be there. When Maeve let go, Nettie straightened up and picked up the journal. She held it against her chest, the way she'd held it through the night ride, through the dawn, through the courthouse doors. "We should go home," she said. "Abilene?" Levi asked. "Josiah's ranch. For now." She looked at Josiah. "If that's still all right?" "It's still all right." They walked out of the courthouse into the midday sun. Slade stood on the opposite side of the street, arms crossed. Harlan was nowhere in sight. Slade watched them load the wagon. He didn't approach. He didn't speak. He just watched with the expression of a man recalculating his odds. "He'll appeal," Nettie said as Josiah helped her onto the wagon. "Let him. He'll find another angle, another loophole, another doctor. And we'll be ready." Nettie looked down at him from the wagon seat. "You really believe that, don't you?" "I believe you sat in that courtroom and made a circuit judge stop eating his lunch. I believe you out-talked a lawyer who's been practicing longer than you've been alive. And I believe your mother hid that journal, knowing her daughter would be strong enough to use it." Josiah climbed up beside her. "Yeah, I believe it." They rode out of Salina at noon. The road west was long and hot. Maeve and Levi rode behind the wagon. Nettie sat beside Josiah with the journal in her lap and the court order folded inside it. Halfway home, Levi pulled alongside the wagon again. "Rider ahead, coming toward us." Josiah's hand moved toward his rifle. Nettie put her hand on his arm. "Wait." The rider came closer. A man in a star badge on a tall black horse. Not Sheriff Briggs. Someone else. He pulled up alongside the wagon and tipped his hat. "Miss Calloway." "That's me." "I'm Deputy U.S. Marshal James Beckett out of Topeka. Judge Waverly sent word ahead. I'm riding to Abilene to execute an arrest warrant for Harlan Calloway." Nettie's hand tightened on the journal. "He's dangerous when he's cornered." "Most men are, ma'am. That's why they sent me, and not a letter." Beckett looked at Josiah. "You the rancher?" "Josiah Crane. Waverly speaks well of you. Said you opened a door." "That's all I did." Beckett almost smiled. "Sometimes that's enough." He tipped his hat again and rode past them toward Abilene, dust rising behind him like a curtain drawing closed on the first act of something that had taken 4 years and 47 days to begin. Nettie watched him go. Her shoulders dropped just slightly. Not defeat. Not relief exactly. Something quieter. The first breath of a woman who was beginning to believe the locked door behind her might actually stay open. "Josiah," she said. "Yeah. Thank you for opening the door." He didn't answer. He just drove the wagon west toward home, while the Kansas sun burned high and hot above them, and the road ahead stretched long and clear. Marshal Beckett reached Abilene before sundown. Josiah's wagon was still 2 hours behind when the first report came back through a rider heading west. Pete Holm again pushing his horse hard, pulling up alongside the wagon with dust caked on his face. "Marshal arrested Harlan," Pete said, breathing heavy. "But it didn't go clean." Nettie sat up straight. "What happened?" "Harlan barricaded himself inside the house, wouldn't come out. Beckett gave him an hour. When the hour was up, Harlan came out the front door with a rifle." Josiah pulled the wagon to a stop. Did he fire? No. He put the rifle on the ground and got on his knees. But he was talking the whole time, loud, yelling to anyone who'd listen that his daughter was a thief and a liar and that Josiah Crane had stolen her for the land. And people listened, Maeve asked from her horse. Pete shifted in his saddle. Some did. Carl Drucker was there, a few men from the saloon. They were nodding along. But then, Mrs. Aldrich came out of her house. She walked right up to Harlan while Beckett was cuffing him and said, "I heard her screaming for 47 nights, and you can call me a liar next." Whole street went quiet after that. Nettie closed her eyes. When she opened them, something had changed. Not relief. Resolution. Where is he now? Jail. Beckett's holding him until transport to Topeka for federal charges. Briggs tried to intervene, said it was a county matter. Beckett told him to step back or join Harlan in the cell. And Briggs walked away. Hasn't been seen since. They sent Pete ahead and kept moving. Nettie didn't speak for a long time. Josiah let the silence hold. Maeve and Levi rode close but didn't push. When they were a mile out from the ranch, Nettie finally spoke. "He'll try to talk to me. From the jail. He'll send someone with a message or write a letter. He'll say he's sorry. He'll say he needs me. You don't have to answer. I know, but I need to decide what I'm going to do when he does. Because part of me..." She stopped. Her jaw tightened. "Part of me still remembers the father he was before the war. Before the drinking. He used to carry me on his shoulders to the river. He taught me to ride. He built me a shelf for my books." Her voice cracked just barely. "The man who locked me in that cellar isn't the same man who built that shelf. But he lives in the same body. And I don't know how to hate one without hating the other." Josiah didn't offer comfort. He didn't tell her it would be all right, or that time would heal it. He'd lost Sarah, and time hadn't healed that. It had just taught him to carry it differently. "You don't have to figure that out tonight," he said. "I know. But I've had 47 days with nothing to do but think, and I still don't have an answer." They reached the ranch after dark. Josiah helped Nettie down from the wagon. Maeve and Levi unsaddled the horses. For a few minutes, nobody talked. They just moved through the work the way people do when their bodies know what to do, even when their minds are somewhere else. Maeve heated water for coffee. They sat on the porch, all four of them drinking in the dark. Nettie held her cup with both hands and stared at the road leading east. "There's something I need to do tomorrow," she said. "What's that?" Maeve asked. "I need to go back to the house. My mother's house." "Nettie, not to see him. He's in jail. I need to go back because I've been running from that place for 47 days, and if I don't walk through that door on my own terms, it'll own me the same way he did." Nobody argued. Josiah nodded. Maeve reached over and squeezed Nettie's hand. Levi said nothing, but he set his coffee down and looked at her with an expression that said he'd be there if she wanted him to be. "I'll go alone," Nettie said. "No, you won't." All three of them said, almost in unison. Nettie laughed. It was small and rough and surprised, like something that had been locked away even longer than she had. "Fine, but I go in first, and nobody follows until I say." They agreed. The next morning, Nettie rode Copper to the Calloway property. Josiah followed on Slate. Maeve and Levi rode behind. They stopped at the fence line and let Nettie go ahead alone. She dismounted and walked to the front door. She stood there for a full minute, hand on the latch. Then she pushed it open and went inside. She was in there for 20 minutes. Nobody timed it. It just felt like 20 minutes of held breath. When she came out, she was carrying a small wooden box and a bundle of cloth. Her face was wet, but her back was straight. "My mother's things," she said. "A few letters, a locket. The deed to the water rights, the original, not the copy my father had." She sewed it into the lining of her winter coat. "Ruth hid a deed in a coat," Maeve asked. "She hid everything in plain sight. That was her gift. She looked like she was keeping house, but she was building an arsenal." Nettie tucked the box under her arm. I'm done here. The house? I'll deal with the house later. Right now I want to go home. She caught herself. I mean your ranch. Josiah's ranch. I don't actually have a home right now. You do, Josiah said. For as long as you need one. She mounted Copper without help and rode back toward the road. She didn't look at the root cellar. She didn't look at the post where she'd carved her marks. She rode forward, and the Calloway house got smaller behind her until it was just a shape on the horizon, no bigger than a fist. 2 days later, Deputy Marshal Beckett came to the ranch. He sat on the porch with Josiah and Nettie and delivered the news in the flat, factual tone of a man who dealt in warrants and handcuffs. Your father's being transported to Topeka for trial. Federal charges. False imprisonment, coercion fraud. The deed transfer has been permanently voided by Judge Waverly. The water rights are secured in your name. Sheriff Briggs has resigned effective immediately. Judge Pruitt has appointed a temporary sheriff until elections. Nettie listened without expression. And Slade? Slade withdrew from the case this morning, filed a notice with the court, and left Abilene on the noon stage. Apparently being associated with a man who chains his daughter in a cellar is bad for business even in Kansas. What about Dr. Poole, the one who signed the affidavit? Beckett's mouth twitched. Judge Waverly referred the matter to the state medical board. Dr. Poole's license is under review. Nettie nodded slowly. So it's over. The legal part. The rest? Beckett paused. That's yours to figure out, Miss Calloway. He tipped his hat and rode off. Nettie watched him go, then turned to Josiah. He's right. The legal part is over, but I still don't know what comes next. What do you want to come next? She thought about it. Not quickly, not the way she'd been thinking for the past week. Fast, tactical, defensive. Slowly. Like someone who could finally afford to take her time. I want to rebuild my mother's house. Not live in it. Rebuild it. Fix the fences. Plant the garden again. Make it look the way it did when she was alive. That's a lot of work. I know how to work. I know you do. And I want to use the water rights the way my mother intended. Not for leverage. Not for profit. For the ranches downstream that depend on it. Fair access. Shared irrigation. The way it should have been all along. Josiah leaned back in his chair. That'll make you popular. I'm not doing it to be popular. I'm doing it because my mother filed those rights to protect a community, and my father tried to turn them into a weapon. I'm putting them back where they belong. The next week passed in work and quiet. Nettie moved between Josiah's ranch and her mother's property, hauling lumber, mending fences, clearing the garden. She worked from dawn to dusk, not out of desperation anymore, but out of purpose. Levi came every other day. He brought supplies from the store and stayed to help with the heavier work. He didn't talk much while they worked, but during breaks he'd ask Nettie questions about the property, about her mother, about what she wanted to grow in the garden. Small questions, patient ones. One afternoon while they were repairing the chicken coop, Nettie stopped and looked at him. Why do you keep coming out here? Levi set down his hammer. Because you need help. There are a lot of people who need help. You don't ride 2 hours for all of them. He met her eyes. No, I don't. Something passed between them. Nettie looked away first, but she was almost smiling. Hand me that board. He handed her the board. Their fingers touched. Neither of them mentioned it. But Levi stayed an hour longer than usual that day, and when he left, Nettie stood by the fence and watched him ride away for longer than a woman watches a man she isn't thinking about. Maeve noticed. Of course she noticed. She came to the ranch one evening with a basket of food and sat with Nettie on the porch while Josiah tended the horses. My son likes you, Maeve said. I know. Do you like him, Maeve? It's a simple question. Nothing about my life is simple right now. It never will be. That's not an answer. Nettie pulled at a thread on her sleeve. He's kind. He showed up with a shotgun pointed at him and didn't flinch. He rode through the night to Selena. He comes out here every other day and doesn't ask for anything. That's a list of things he's done. I asked how you feel. Nettie was quiet for a long time. I feel like I spent 4 years in the dark, and he's the first person who didn't try to be the sun. He just stood nearby and let me find my own way into the light. Maeve pressed her lips together, fighting a smile and losing. That's the best thing anyone has ever said about my boy, and I'm going to pretend I didn't hear it, so I don't cry on your porch. Nettie laughed. Real laughter this time. Not rough, not surprised. Warm. A month after the arrest, Nettie received a letter. It came through the post addressed in her father's handwriting. She held it for an hour before she opened it, sitting on the porch of her mother's house. Her house now freshly painted garden starting to green. Josiah offered to stay while she read it. She told him she needed to do it alone. He walked to the fence and waited. She opened the letter. It was short. Harlan's handwriting was shaky, worse than she remembered. The letter said he was sorry. It said the drinking had taken him somewhere he never meant to go. It said he remembered carrying her to the river. It said he remembered the shelf he built for her books. It said he didn't expect forgiveness. He just wanted her to know that somewhere underneath everything he'd become the father who built that shelf was still there, and that he was ashamed of what he'd done to him. Nettie read it twice. Then she folded it and put it in the wooden box with her mother's things. She didn't cry. She didn't tear it up. She just put it away in a box with the other pieces of a life she was still learning how to carry. When Josiah came back, she looked at him and said, "He says he's sorry." Do you believe him? I believe he means it right now. I don't believe it'll last, but I believe he means it today, and I don't know if that's enough. She closed the box. Maybe someday I'll know. Maybe someday's good enough for now. Fall came early that year. Nettie's garden produced its first harvest tomatoes, squash beans. She brought a basket to Maeve's store and set it on the counter without a word. Maeve looked at the vegetables, then at Nettie, and pulled her into a hug that lasted longer than either of them expected. Judge Pruitt stopped by the ranch one afternoon. He sat with Nettie and Josiah and told them Harlan had pled guilty in Topeka. 5 years in federal custody. Slade's competency motion had been officially struck from the record, and the water rights had been filed with the county in Nettie's name permanent and uncontested. Your mother would have been proud, Pruitt said. Everyone keeps telling me that. Because it's true. I know it's true. I just wish she were here to see it, instead of having to be proud from wherever she is. Pruitt nodded. He understood grief that didn't soften with time. He left without saying anything else, and that was exactly right. Levi came for dinner that night. He'd been coming for dinner most nights now, though nobody called it what it was. He brought firewood and a jar of his mother's preserves. Nettie made stew with her own tomatoes. Josiah ate with them, then excused himself to check on the horses, a task that didn't need doing but gave 2 young people a porch to themselves. They sat in the cooling air, and Levi said, "I have something to ask you." "Ask." "There's a harvest dance in town next Saturday. Would you?" "Yes." "I didn't finish." "You didn't need to." He grinned. She grinned back. And sitting on that porch with stew on the stove and a garden growing and a locked door 3 miles away that would never close again. Nettie Calloway felt something she hadn't felt in 4 years. Not safety. She'd found that at Josiah's ranch, not justice. She'd found that in a courtroom in Selena. Not even love, though that was coming slow and steady as a man who brings firewood and doesn't ask for anything. She felt free. Not the wild, desperate freedom of running, the quiet freedom of staying, of choosing where to stand and who to stand with, and knowing that the door at her back opened both ways. Josiah watched them from the barn door. He thought about Sarah, about the chestnut mare she'd picked for her kind eyes, about a pot of soup brought to a grieving man's porch by a woman named Ruth, who knew that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is sit with someone and say nothing at all. He thought about a cellar door and a padlock and 47 marks carved into a post by a girl who refused to lose count of her own days. He thought about the fact that he'd ridden out for fencing wire and come back with a war. And he thought about what Maeve had said that first morning in the store, the thing that had started all of it. "You're not the kind of man who can unsee a thing once he's seen it." She was right. He couldn't unsee it, and he was glad. The harvest dance was on a Saturday. Nettie wore a dress Maeve had made for her blue cotton with white stitching. Levi wore a clean shirt and boots he'd polished until they reflected lamplight. They danced 3 songs. Nettie stepped on his feet twice. He didn't mention it. Mrs. Aldrich sat in a chair by the wall and watched them with tears running down her face and a smile she couldn't stop. Reverend Pike played fiddle badly, but nobody cared. "Doctor." Hensley bought Nettie a glass of cider and said, "Your mother would be dancing right beside you." "She is," Nettie said. Josiah stood at the edge of the room, hat in his hands, watching. Maeve came and stood beside him. "You did a good thing, Josiah Crane. I opened a door. That's what good things look like sometimes, just opening a door." The music played. People danced. Nettie laughed at something Levi said, and the sound carried across the room like a bell ringing after years of silence. And somewhere in a federal jail in Topeka, Harlan Calloway sat in a cell and listened to the silence and counted the days the way his daughter had counted them 1 mark at a time, wondering if anyone would come. The difference was, Nettie had stopped counting. She didn't need to anymore. The door was open. The marks on the post were behind her, and the life ahead of her was hers, not given, not stolen, not signed away under duress in the dark, earned. Every single day of it. Earned. Now, if this story moved you, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment and tell me which part stayed with you longest. Tell me what time it is where you're listening and what state or country you call home. Every story shared here is gathered and retold with care. Some details are shaped to deepen the meaning, while the images you see are created with AI to bring the emotion to life. If this kind of storytelling speaks to you, stay with us. There are more stories coming, and maybe the next one will be the one that reminds you, no matter how long you've been counting marks on a post, it only takes one open door to start again.